And I just want to say at the beginning, I'm a big fan of capitalism, and I am a big fan of success. I am not trying to punish success. What I'm trying to do is make sure that we have competition.
My guest today is Congressman Ken Buck, who represents Colorado's 4th Congressional District. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Let's talk about big tech. Now, Congressman, you have been very open about your belief that big tech represents a threat to free speech. Given that we believe that is the case, what is Congress's responsibility to deal with this?
Well, there are a number of strategies that have been developed, and I think it's really important to understand. I am the ranking Republican on the Antitrust Subcommittee, so I'm advocating for antitrust action. I also believe that we've got to figure Section 230 out, and I also believe that we have to look at certain privacy laws and make a determination about privacy laws. But I think you can't get the job done with just one or two of those. You really have to look at all three. And so I believe that if we create competition in the marketplace, people have 5 Facebooks to choose from, they have 8 search engines to choose from, they can then make a decision and create the kind of platforms that we're looking for. Right now, those monopolies are crushing competition and acting in a way that doesn't give consumers choice.
Absolutely. And I'd like to go through those 3 sections individually. So let's start with antitrust. What does that look like? Does this look like what we had back in like the early 1900s with, the Rockefellers and stuff like that? How do we work that angle?
So I think these companies actually dwarf anything that we had in the early 1900s in scope. It's really unbelievable what these companies have created. And I just want to say at the beginning, I'm a big fan of capitalism, and I am a big fan of success. I am not trying to punish success. What I'm trying to do is make sure that we have competition. These companies succeeded because there was a marketplace that allowed them and really fostered them in a lot of different ways. So I think what we're ultimately talking about is one, the first bill that will come to the floor in the House. It's already passed the Senate Judiciary Committee. Is what we call the venue bill, and it allows state attorney generals to sue these companies and keep that case in their home state. So often these cases are removed to the Northern District of California, and the state attorney general from Texas or Florida is playing in the backyard of these Silicon Valley giants. And so that would be one case. Another thing that really is an important concept, when you search for something on a search engine, that's your data. That is not the search engine's data, shouldn't be the search engine's data to market and sell to advertisers. So if people own their data, just like when you own your cell phone number, you can take that with you to another cell phone company, that opened up competition. This is the same idea. If you own your data and you want to go to another search engine, that search engine, we believe, will actually pay you in the future to take that because they can monetize your data. And also, if you decide you don't want it monetized, you just want to keep that data private, you can do that also. And that's what consumer choice is really all about.
Absolutely. So the second angle you mentioned was Section 230. So Section 230, briefly, is something that companies can use as a liability shield, publisher versus platform. How do we reform Section 230?
I haven't been as involved in that debate, and I'm fascinated to hear it because there are some of my friends who believe that we should get rid of Section 230 altogether. There are some of my friends who believe that we should break 230 up very specifically instead of having sort of this generic all of the above. If you find something offensive, you can keep it off of your platform and make it just much more specific. It has to be an imminent threat. It has to involve pornography. It has to, and even when you do that, you are giving these woke big tech companies and their employees the discretion, and given their bias, they're going to use that discretion against conservatives. And perfect example, if you had some imminent threat standard, they would say that when you talk about a vaccine or a mask, it's an imminent threat. And so they're going to take that off. So it's really, there's hardly any language that I can think of that would be specific enough to curtail the censorship of these companies.
I do want to talk about the final angle that you mentioned, which is conservative competitors, but that is something that really struck me as well. When we look at some of these sites like Twitter and Facebook, they oftentimes will use the phrase misinformation as a excuse to ban content that they don't like. Often that is either anti-vaccine or anti-mandate content. How does misinformation, or this idea of misinformation, play a role in censorship on these big tech platforms?
Well, you use it. It's an excuse. You know, one thing that we have in this country that makes us unique and really special is we can be wrong. And the way to address speech that's false, wrong, intentionally wrong, is with more good speech. We never, as a country, no, I shouldn't say we never. We have had tyrants in the past. John Adams with the Sedition Act, Woodrow Wilson with the Sedition Act. We have had presidents that have tried to stifle negative speech. And the answer to that is always more speech. The answer is that we protest in the streets. The answer is that we use those God-given rights in the Bill of Rights to make sure that we overcome those people, small-minded people, that want to make sure we don't have the ability to be wrong.
So the final angle that we've discussed is conservative competitors to these large sites. So how do places like Parler, Getter, Rumble, what role do they play in this debate over big tech?
Well, Parler's a perfect example. You had a company that was competing. It wasn't a huge portion of the market, but it was competing. And then there was this seemingly, I have no evidence of it, but it sure seemed awful suspicious that all of a sudden, the Amazon Web Services acted, and then Apple acted, or maybe in the other order, and so you had all these woke companies deciding, well, Parler's reckless, and we're going to take them down. So you again, and we learned something from that. We now have web services that will host conservative platforms. So some good came of that. But the necessity is to have more parlors, stronger parlors, and parlors that are immune from that kind of really collusive behavior.
So we have actually got a new social media platform that has just come out called Truth Social, and this is a platform that has been backed by President Trump. What are your thoughts on this new platform?
Well, a good friend of mine, Devin Nunes, is running that platform, and I think he will be wildly successful with it. I think President Trump has put together the funding that's necessary to make that successful. I understand that there is a waiting list just to get on that platform. It's so popular at this point, and I think that's exactly what we need. Now, Twitter is not as much of a monopoly, and that marketplace is easier to penetrate than the marketplaces that we're talking about with Facebook and Amazon and Apple and Google. So it is a little bit different, and it's not even one of the companies we're aiming at with these antitrust bills. But I think it's really essential that we create the kind of competition and we have this robust debate in our society.
One final question for you, Congressman. Do we believe that big tech will ever recognize it's important to have conservative voices on the platform, or are we going to have to move to these other platforms to let our voices be heard?
I think that big tech reacts to profit and loss, and the more that we can pressure them, the better we're going to be at getting them to move in the right direction. So in other words, if these new platforms force Twitter to reconsider their position, they'll reconsider their position. And that's what competition does, and that's exactly the reason why we need the antitrust laws.
That was Congressman Ken Buck, who represents Colorado's 4th Congressional District. Congressman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.